Let's jump right into a fascinating fictional scenario from Oscar Catwood's thriller. It's a story that exposes some very real vulnerabilities in the predictive algorithms we interact with every single day. In this explainer, we're going to unpack a really brilliant concept from his work, the idea of predictive collapse. We're exploring what happens when massive, data-driven systems that forecast human behavior just stop working. Not because of a computer virus or a hack, but because human beings themselves fundamentally change. It's a gripping narrative, sure, but it also asks some absolutely crucial questions about the real-world tracking systems all around us.
We kick off our investigation alongside intelligence analyst Kael. He works in this intense, high-stakes, data-driven world, and he realizes something pretty profound. When data models fail, the true story is actually hidden in the panicked, fractured tone of the reports landing on his desk. He knows algorithms and confidence scores, they can totally be manipulated. But the genuine human anxiety bleeding through the official jargon of those reports, now that tells a deeper truth. And early one Friday morning, Kael spots an undeniable fracture in the system.
Get this, within just 8 minutes, 4 highly restricted reports drop into his queue. Looking at the data from these events, we see an impossible pattern emerging across completely unrelated, highly controlled global sectors. We're talking about health in Sao Paulo, finance in London, education in Singapore, and military operations at NATO. 4 entirely different industries, 4 different regions of the globe, all experiencing a simultaneous breakdown in expected human behavior. So let's zoom in and see exactly what's failing here.
Over in the medical data from Sao Paulo, we aren't seeing a new miracle drug. Instead, we find patients describing this profound, subjective shift where they literally just stopped fighting themselves. These are chronic cases, right? And they're suddenly showing statistically improbable recovery profiles. Inflammatory markers are dropping, sleep is improving, and the patients report feeling an internal physical unlocking. The predictive models completely expected them to deteriorate based on historical data, but instead they're experiencing this spontaneous, untriggered healing. It's wild.
Meanwhile, in London's financial sector, the models are flying completely blind. Why? Because consumers are suddenly refusing to panic. Usually, if high-anxiety news hits, the algorithm fully expects us to panic buy, sell off stocks, or stockpile goods. But those scarcity triggers are just failing. Compulsion indices are plummeting independently of economic confidence. The system naturally assumes that if people aren't reacting, they must feel safe. But as Kael figures out, this isn't standard safety. These people are simply becoming less available to manipulation.
And the education sector is seeing the exact same thing. A remarkably blunt report from Singapore notes that students aren't just ignoring reward loops, they are actively rejecting the artificial, speed-driven design of the learning system itself. You've got a 12-year-old asking why learning platforms reward speed over actual understanding. Entire classrooms are completely ignoring animated reward prompts to have deep philosophical discussions instead. They're highly engaged, but they are entirely refusing the behavior-shaping nudges that the system heavily relies on.
Now, to understand why this absolutely terrifies Kael's intelligence agency, we really need to talk about predictive integrity. This is a real-world concept where forecasting relies on repeated, stable human behavioral patterns. Think about your own life for a second. Real-world policing, market forecasts, the social media algorithms on your phone, they all function by looking at what you did yesterday to guess what you're going to do tomorrow. But if our baseline behavior suddenly shifts, the models lose their integrity. They become totally unreadable.
As Kael and his colleague Elara deduce, this situation reveals the dark core conflict of the story. These massive global tracking systems don't actually want you to be healthy or balanced. They need you to be legible, meaning fear-conditioned, stressed out, and predictably obedient. A healthy person, someone who is grounded, present, and acting from a place of internal calm, is statistically unpredictable to a machine. These systems were quite literally built to read fragmented, anxious people, not whole people.
So the absolutely crucial takeaway here is that when fear and fragmentation stop functioning as stable inputs, the entire predictive apparatus begins to systematically collapse. The algorithms aren't actually broken, they're just starving. The data they desperately need to function, our anxiety, our compulsion, our predictable reactions to stress, it's all drying up. All across the globe, humanity is basically falling out of the anxious rhythm these machines were built to measure.
And then, the anomaly spills out into the physical world. There's a massive hack of Heathrow Airport's advertising screens, and it projects the single, untraceable command out of the head and back to the heart. For 3 entire seconds, every single screen goes black, cutting through this endless cycle of luxury goods and travel offers to display just this one powerful phrase. It has zero attribution, no visible digital footprint, and absolutely no apparent sender.
Now, this command isn't just cryptic poetry. It's actually heavily grounded in the real-world science of cardiac coherence. This is a physiological state where shifting out of dysregulation creates profound biological and emotional stability. In reality, researchers have shown that when our heart rhythms become ordered, it directly improves our cognitive function and emotional regulation. So in the context of Cotwood's Thriller, this phrase serves as a massive trigger. It's a physical reminder literally pulling people out of cognitive overload and back into a grounded, coherent state.
What's truly fascinating is how the people in the airport react to this hack. It's not with panic, but with this deep internal recognition that Elara beautifully describes as a remembering rather than a command. In the middle of a chaotic, busy airport terminal, people just naturally slow down. A woman puts her phone face down, the entire atmosphere shifts. There's no ideological campaign pushing this, no political movement driving it. It's just a spontaneous, global emergence of internal quiet. When Kael actually maps the spontaneous appearances of this phrase, from a classroom in Kyoto all the way to a Mediterranean marine base, it perfectly overlays the exact zones where the predictive models are failing. It acts almost like a unified field. The places where the phrase pops up, whether it's written on medication charts, carved into lockers, or spoken by children, are the exact same places where the medical, financial, and military algorithms are completely breaking down. This human shift into coherence is directly causing the technological collapse.
Elara connects this phenomenon to ancient history. See, instead of viewing time as this straight line of endless, stressful progress, many cultures view it as cycles of decline and renewal. We've pushed the system to the absolute brink of distortion, and now a natural correction is forcing a reset. Our modern systems completely over-relied on human distortion, and because of that, an almost biological correction is taking place to renew our baseline.
We are basically witnessing a profound paradigm shift in real time. We're watching an old architecture, completely starved of its fear-based fuel, making way for a new system that demands actual, conscious participation. The old way relied heavily on pushing buttons and predicting obedience, but the new way emerging through the population, it doesn't force anything. It simply asks for presence. It's driven by this internal recall and a steadfast refusal to engage in dissonance anymore. Risking his entire career, Kael types the truest assessment of the data into an irreversible intelligence channel. He completely redefines this perceived threat as a profound healing process. He realizes that to his superiors, this loss of predictive control just looks like pure chaos, but the data shows the exact opposite. The system isn't breaking into disorder. The chronic fear conditioning is lifting to reveal a natural, hidden human order that was actually there all along.
Of course, a frightened establishment is never going to go quietly, right? As Elara notes, a system built entirely on control will inevitably try to contain this newfound health by treating it as an attack. Step 1, the predictive systems lose access to their required distortions. Step 2, the establishment panics because the population is no longer legible to them. And finally, Step 3, the tragic irony where the system which was built to manage illness and stress actively labels human wellness and coherence as a direct security threat.
But beneath all the surveillance networks and the pressure economies, this story deeply suggests that true order comes from within. It completely overrides these elegant, massive systems built on human fragmentation. The old paradigm mistook domination for order and constant urgency for aliveness. What Kael senses as he looks out over London isn't the end of the world. It's the unstoppable, ground-up healing of a fundamentally diseased way of living. It's a quiet revolution of the heart.
So I want to leave you with this to consider. If our real-world algorithms feed on our anxiety, our constant clicks, and our outrage, what happens to those systems when we finally decide to quiet our minds and step back into coherence? Cotwood's Thriller really forces us to ask if we are sacrificing our inner peace simply to remain legible to the machines all around us. What could change in your life today if you deliberately stepped out of your head and back into your heart? Think about it. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the data around you.